I think it's time to blow this scene. Get everybody in the stuff together. Okay, 3, 2, 1, let's jam.
Hey everyone, welcome to the episode. With me today is Plasmo, and we're talking all about Stunfest this year.
Hello.
Hey Plasmo, how's it going?
Going good.
And I was going to say, if you guys aren't aware, there is an episode I recorded last year with Plasmo and Eaglet about 2018 Stunfest, so it can be like a follow-up to that episode in a way.
Yeah, Eaglet unfortunately couldn't make it this year, and I'm sure he's still quite busy, so yeah.
He's holding it down in the chat, but it sounded like he had some stuff he had to take care of this year. So, before Stunfest, actually, this year had a little bit of a lead-up with two events. The first one was Fightcade, which I didn't have a chance to go to. It was in Spain. But you were there, right?
I really wanted to go, but in the end, I had some other obligations, so unfortunately I couldn't make it myself. But a couple of other guys were there you might be familiar with. So Jaimers was there, Feedbacker, I think, Blackisto as well. So not only the Spanish Shmup's crew, but also some from abroad, at least from Europe. But I definitely plan to go there myself next year, because that's probably the next big thing, shooting game-wise here in Europe.
Yeah, and it didn't look like this year they had a stream, or I was bugging them about it, but I could never track it down. Did they have one that you know of?
At least they have recorded some replays. So the one with Kamui, well, that was last year, not this year. But this year I remember some other Japanese players coming over there, and the replays you can find on YouTube, but I'm not sure if they have actually live streamed it. I don't know about that.
Yeah, I'll have to check out those replays and link them, because I was really interested in seeing some of those demonstrations on there.
Yeah, I've heard that they had more cabinets than they had players, so it was a crazy setup with like 40 or 50 cabs and huge lines of shmups installed, but then they only had just a few players, which is kind of unfortunate. So yeah, we all have to go there next year.
Yeah, I was afraid something like that might happen to myself if I ever did a shmup event in my area. It would literally be me and one other person showing up, just because Idaho is so far away from the other shmup players.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking, I wondered to catch your thoughts on this. Next summer, this is tentative, this isn't in stone, but next summer having a bunch of guys from the Midwest area and myself go to Galloping Ghost and invade their arcade and like destroy all their high scores on their machines.
That sounds like a cool idea. I've heard a lot of stories about that arcade, and that they have like basically all games you could possibly imagine. Very rare ones as well, and have some people going for high scores as well, but I think mostly on very old games, so like the 80s, but nothing for the more modern games. But yeah, sounds cool.
They have a pretty solid shmup lineup. They have Grega, they have Death Smiles, they have a list, maybe I'll post it here. One thing that got me a little riled up is they have the world records on the machines. And the Dodonpachi world record is like 150 million. That's not the Dodonpachi world record.
Well, it is the world record in this arcade, I guess.
Yeah. So I want to go over there and beat that score, get the world record, so to say.
Yeah, that sounds like a cool plan. I've heard that they don't have any cabinets to sit down, though, so you have to stand, as it was usual for American arcades. So it's a very different feeling compared to the usual Japanese candy caps you will see in Japan. And of course in such events as the Fightcade offline or the Stunfest, we all have sit-down cabinets. And that's usually what you go for as well, right? But in Galloping Ghost, you have to stand. So
I've never seen a sit-down cabinet in my life. Not once.
Oh, It's excellent, especially if you want to go for a serious competitive play. It really, you can appreciate it a lot that you can just sit down.
That's cool. See, the cabinets I've always used are stand-up cabs, and what you do is you get a bar stool and you like bring it
Oh, I
over to the
see.
cabinet and sit on a bar stool.
Mm.
The problem with that though is like a lot of the cabinets, not all, but a lot of cabinets, the controls are slanted. They're kind of slanted downward a little bit. So you gotta rest your hand at kind of a funny angle sometimes. If you get just the right height bar stool, it can work.
I can imagine.
American cabinets are not built for competitive play at all. They have the worst sticks, the worst buttons, no auto fire. It's just hammer till your hands fall off.
Oh yeah, those jank sticks. Now you remind me.
Yeah, I was trying to get a really high score in Metal Slug at my local arcade,
Right.
and they don't have turbo. But my arm about fell off. That game is a lot of mashing.
Yeah, that sounds awful, man.
Yeah, if people ever wonder, is it okay to use auto fire? Say, go play Metal Slug on an American cabinet with those heavy buttons, and you'll see why auto fire is a good thing.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like fun at all to me.
Anyway, another event that I put together myself just before Stunfest was the Shmup Slam, and it kind of occurred to me pretty out of nowhere. I thought, hey, I should do a little demonstration event before Stunfest to kind of get people excited about Stunfest, and so that's why it came together so quickly.
Ah, I didn't know about the reason that it was actually connected to Stunfest then. That's cool.
Yeah, I was thinking of how a lot of fighting game tournaments, before the big one, before EVO or before a huge tournament, they have these little preview events or these smaller
Oh,
tournaments to get
I
everyone
see.
kind of like, oh snap, getting all excited for EVO. And I thought Shmup should try and do something like that, so that's why I put Shmup Slam together.
I wasn't aware
I
of
think
it.
it turned out pretty well
Yeah,
for
definitely.
how quickly it came together.
I think the only thing that I would maybe change for next year, if you are going for it again, would be to have more live plays because that's very exciting. And to have those pre-recorded replays, it's also cool, depending on the replay, of course. So you had a great selection this year, I must say. But I think it's all about the live plays, isn't it?
It is indeed. That was the number one feedback because when I was organizing this thing, I had no idea what was going to happen. I
Yeah.
actually thought it would be called the Mark Show, where no one would sign up, and it would just be me, like, coming up with all kinds of bullshit to put on stream. Like, okay, I'll live play, I'll, like, just try and hold down the stream. But it turned out to be way more popular than I thought, and so I was getting tons and tons of people. And then it turned into this 12-hour marathon where at first I thought it'd be like a 3-hour thing I'd do in the morning. And so,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
Shmup
insane.
Slam got pretty crazy. But the number one feedback everyone was really talking about was the live demonstrations.
Right.
So when I do the follow-up in November, I think it'll be like 80% live, and it'll be a lot shorter than 12 hours long because that was a grind. But
Yeah, I suppose when when you're going for live plays or primarily live plays, you will get less requests, which then also will result in a shorter event, which is fine. I mean, no one actually will follow 12 hours of replays other than the one who is organizing it, of course. So maybe have something like, I don't know, this is just my opinion, but like 5 hours or 6 hours, and that should do it, I think. I mean, shmups are very short games, and you can put in some titles, but yeah, up to you. I will definitely give it a watch next year.
yeah, I'm definitely not doing the 12-hour one. If I do something really long like that, I'm going to get some backup. Someone else to do the other 6.5 or
Yeah,
something.
right. That sounds much better than yeah for you.
KZ helped out a lot though at the end there,
Oh, that's
where
great.
I was just like fading on the mic. I was like, KZ, hold down the mic. So that was Shmup Slam. One thing I want to talk about with that event though is that was just a small, kind of little bit ghetto offline event that I did. But you wouldn't believe the amount of organization and time it spent just putting something like that together. So it kind of gave me a lot more perspective on holy shit. Running something like Stunfest must be an insane amount of time and work and organization.
Yeah,
So I wanted to ask you, what was that like this year?
I mean, yeah, just as you can imagine, it was tons of work, and the worst thing is probably that in essence it's only one guy who is doing all the organization for the shmup section, which who is Yam, and he's the only one, and I only helped him out with the players, with the super players, and talked to them and saw who is playing which games and what could be interesting for a live demonstration. During the event itself, he had to do basically everything because I can't speak French and he has to talk to all the people, get the cabinets, get the games together. It's only one person, which is insane to think about, and I really just helped a little bit in the background.
Yeah, I can imagine just removing all of the demonstration parts and all that, just getting those cabinets there.
Right.
I'm sure was
right.
Unless they're like in his garage or something. That sounds like a crazy amount of organization. Are those his personal collection, or is he like pulling them from other arcades? How's that working?
So there's a French seller, I think mostly arcade stuff or only arcade stuff. It's called James Game Center. And he was kind enough to give us, I think it was 6 cabinets for this year and some games as well. So it's not his personal stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say,
yeah.
How many machines were you guys running at the end there? You have a cool album you put up of all the different photos, but how many would you estimate at the end there?
Right, so we had 6 candy caps originally, but one, it didn't work, so we had to put that away, and we had 5 running and working candy caps. And besides that, we also had the Darius Burst setup, which you may remember from the pictures. We had 2 huge monitors put side by side, and it probably was the bigger screen than the actual Darius Burst cabinet in the end, which was quite insane to look at, and it was a lot of fun. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get a 4-player setup, so you could only play single player on this one, but it was great. And then we also had a console setup for the first time. Actually, we were able to, I think it was 2 360s Xboxes hooked up to CRT monitors, and then we had a PC playing Pararumi. We also had a Touhou section for the first time. I think it was 3 PCs playing various Touhou games. And some more consoles I can't remember at the moment. Oh yeah, we had a Famicom as well. So you could play Gradius 2, Salamander, all those games on this one.
Were the console setups, were they kind of open port, or were they connected to a cabinet and an arcade stick?
I think you had arcade stick setups for all of those I just listed, minus the Touhous. I think the Touhou players were mostly playing with keyboard anyway.
Yeah, I could definitely see that.
Yeah.
That'd be interesting if you made a cabinet that had keyboard controls or like a hitbox style controls on it.
Yeah, that would
for the Touhou players.
I think I've seen some setups of people running Touhou games on their cabinets, but I don't think they went all the way and actually controlled it with a keyboard. I think it was still arcade stick, but yeah, some people put Touhou into a cabinet. Why not? It looks funny.
That'd be something I'd do. Speaking of the Touhou setup, I'm curious, okay, how popular were those setups compared to the rest of the machines? How strong was the Touhou scene this year?
I think they were just as popular as the other games. So usually you had people playing them and people lining up, maybe 1-2 people lining up. So maybe just a little bit less popular than the candy caps, which was just very crowded. But for the first time to have Touhou at Stunfest there, I think it was greatly appreciated by the people, and some of the Touhou players who exclusively play Touhou also made their first debut on Stunfest. So that was great to see the communities coming together, because I think in the end it's shooting games, no matter if you enjoy Touhou or if you enjoy the arcade games. So it was great just to hang out together.
Yeah, and it's almost silly, really, to divide up our communities, at least by players, because there's not enough of us to divide up.
Exactly.
If Touhou was like this huge scene, and we were this huge scene, and we were just balling out and had all these players, and it's like, oh, we don't have room for the Touhou guys, we have too many players, that would be one thing, but there's literally so few of us that it almost makes no sense not to interact more, to justify our existences a little more.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's not a big secret that I don't play any Touhou games, and I don't think I will ever get really deep into a Touhou game. But I can still appreciate how people play those games, and the approaches are so similar to the games I play. So I don't think it makes any sense to divide the communities even more.
There are a lot of people that I interact with that are arcade players also play Touhou. Like Jaimers does, Pearl does.
Right,
the
right.
overlap
There's a
is
great
massive.
overlap of players.
Yeah.
Yeah, and many of the best players we have in the West playing arcade games actually have a Touhou background. So
Yeah.
there's also this.
I guess one reason people kind of divide it up is Touhou itself. Isn't there a large part of Touhou? Because I checked out their R Touhou Reddit, and it was massive. But a lot of those people aren't necessarily hardcore players. It's more about the aesthetics and the music and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's the thing with Touhou. I think the community, if you just call it Touhou community, is quite huge. But most of the people, the great majority, I suppose, is just interested in the stories and the characters and all the merchandise and this stuff. So the score-centered players who play those games competitively and push for high scores, find new strategies, record replays, they're not that many, I think.
Right. Yeah, and I'd say they're essentially the same they're essentially the same thing we do, so
Yeah.
I wouldn't really divide them out either.
Right. And I think the Toho community has the same division between players and non-players we also have in our arcade community, with the collectors on the one side and the players on the other side.
Right,
So
exactly.
I don't think we need one more division, but one division between the people who don't play the games but can appreciate the aesthetics on the one side and the people who do play the games. This one division is enough for me, I think.
Yeah, me too. Compared to last year, because I remember last year, you and Eaglet, remembering from the interview, you guys said it was like hella stressful planning Stunfest. Was this year any less stressful?
I think it was a little bit less stressful. The reason for this being that last year the Japanese players were coming over 3 days in advance to have less jet lag and get ready for the runs. And this year, well, first of all, we didn't have any Japanese players. This also means that I didn't have to function as an interpreter, and also that I don't have to do like lots of plannings beforehand. So I think all players were arriving on Thursday, so 1 day in advance only. So we didn't go to Paris with them or traveled around France, and this helped to make it much less stressful, I think, in the end.
Yeah, I could see that. Being like a host, especially a sort of professional host in a way, because I used to be a tour guide, so I can kind of understand.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
being a tour guide is like a lot more work than people think, especially if you want to do a really good job. So
Yeah, so this was exactly the issue we had last year. Well, not the issue, because it can also be fun, of course, but it is stressful and it is work, definitely. And the one thing that has changed, so some extra obligations for me, were the English commentaries for the restream.
hmm
So I didn't do that last year, and I had my first experience this year, and they were quite exhausting, I must say. So I can appreciate the people who were doing it last year. I think Icarus and some others. It's tough work.
soft drink held it down on the English restream. So this year you stepped up and were on the mic, and also Jaimers, and then Danbo for Blue Revolver, which was really fun.
Yeah, so the original idea was just that I do the English restream commentary, and James was just jumping in, and I really cannot thank him enough, because he was the main source for all the important information, basically. And I just asked him 5 minutes before the first stream if he just wanted to jump in, and then he decided to almost go for every single commentary. So that was just great. So thanks a lot, James. And also, thanks to Danbo for doing the first commentary for the Blue Revolver.
Yeah, I thought your guys' commentary was actually a lot of fun to listen to, because in some runs it was kind of a fun dynamic where, like the Touhou runs, where he was obviously really well versed in Touhou, and you were kind of just asking him, okay, what the hell's going on here and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. Because I didn't really know anything about Ten Desires. I just tried to be the one asking the questions and just hoping for James to give some good replies, and which he did. The craziest thing is that before he told me he wasn't really that knowledgeable on Ten Desires, and he wasn't sure if he can give all the information needed. But in the end, he just did the job perfectly.
I think it was fun watching some pretty quotable moments there during the Futari runs.
Yeah.
There was one moment, I think SMC mentioned this too, where he said the hitbox in 1.01 is just a suggestion.
Oh yeah, I remember that one, which is very true. Very true.
So yeah, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. So what did you think from your own experience, how did you like being a commentator and on the mic? Did you find it kind of fun, or was it stressful, annoying? How did you enjoy it?
During the commentary itself, it was quite fun, but also challenging. And only after the commentary basically has ended, you begin to realize that you feel quite exhausted. And I had to take a break, get something to eat. And yeah, but it was great fun. I would be up for it again anytime, preferably for games that I'm a bit more well versed with. Well, Ten Desires I didn't know anything about, and I learned a great deal, so that's cool. Futari, I just knew the basics, and Blue Revolver is another game I didn't spend too much time on. So yeah, but the concept itself of giving those commentaries was great fun, definitely.
For people, if you haven't checked out the stream yet, you've got to watch Danbo's commentary for Blue Revolver, because it's almost like
Oh yeah,
it was really good, and he was really funny dude. It was kind of like when you watch Quentin Tarantino movie or something, and then you watch it with Tarantino's commentary. It's a really cool experience, so I think you guys should definitely check that out.
yeah, he did a great job there.
So aside from the demonstrations themselves, this year you guys also did some cabinet streaming, which I thought was really cool.
Right, which was originally your idea, I think.
Maybe?
We never really thought about it. I mean, we basically thought of Stunfest being this offline meetup, and we just play games, and of course then we have the demonstrations. But that's about it. And I think you were the first person suggesting that maybe you should put a stream on, put a cap on stream, and it was a great idea, I think. So yeah, all thanks to you.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I thought it was really cool too, because yeah, you got to get some kind of unofficial style super plays sometimes, where Juju Kenobi on Black Label, or you'd get people destroying Ketsui. I don't know if Jaimers ever played. I can't remember.
Yeah, for most of the time, I think the people playing on the cap that was on stream weren't that good, just because there were just random people passing by. And unfortunately for the people who were really good, like Juju Kenobi or Feedbacker at Dio Joe, both play with the keyboard at home, so they weren't really used to play with the stick, and had some trouble getting used to it. So even if those were playing, yeah, I mean, you could see that the routes were quite good, but they couldn't execute them in the way they wanted to.
Yeah, that's a rough transition for a lot of the keyboard players, it sounds like.
Yeah, it takes some time to get used to. But still, we got some good stuff on the streaming cap, I think. If you want to watch through all the tens of hours, 20, 30 hours, or how many stuff we have recorded there, you will find some good stuff in there for sure.
Did you have any trouble with the actual technical streaming setup itself, or was that not too bad?
I don't think, yeah, that wasn't too bad at all. I think only one time we just forgot to click on stream. So we wanted to stream, but didn't stream for 3 or 4 hours before we just begin to realize that we didn't stream.
Oh yeah, the classic. I know that feeling.
Yeah, but other than that, I think it went quite smoothly. Oh yeah, the sound. I think we had sound issues, right?
Well, what would happen is that in some of the demonstrations, Ketsui would bleed into the sound on your guys' commentary. Probably just because it was like coming out from the cabinet and landing on your microphone. So sometimes, it was kind of funny, sometimes you'd be watching Futari and you'd hear like lock-on noises, you're like, whoa, there's no lock-on in Futari.
Oh yeah, those lock-on noises, yeah, they were everywhere.
It wasn't too bad though. I think it would be pretty easily solved just by either turning down the cabs during the, I don't know how, if you can do that or not, during the runs, or moving yourself a little further away from the cabinets.
Yeah, the problem was that with the setup, we didn't really have any microphones, only the one installed in the notebook itself, but we had no microphone setup whatsoever other than this. So we had a lot of outside noises, and we tried to pull down the volume on the Blue Revolver was right behind the notebook, and yeah, Ketsui was to the left of us, so that's why you could hear it, yeah.
I don't think it was a huge deal or anything, but if you guys get your own dedicated mics next time, that'll solve the problem.
Right, and one more thing. So last year's Stunfest, Icarus and Soft Drink were able to do the English commentary for the restream behind the main stage. So they had a quiet place to sit, but we were not able to do this year. So we had to basically do the stream from the playing area. So that wasn't that convenient. So this would definitely be a thing to change for next year.
Here's my hot take for stream setup this year. I actually liked it that you guys were in the playing area. Besides the sound issues, I actually thought it was way cooler that you guys were in the play area because you could see people walking around in the backgrounds. You could kind of, where, like last year's Stunfest, kind of feels like you're watching a fighting game tournament where like the commentators are behind the booth or they're like, I mean, some people like that better because it seems more official and more professional and stuff. For me, I actually liked that you guys were in the area because you could kind of like peep what was going on behind you, and it seemed more like a bunch of, how do you say it, like a more organic experience in a way where you could see people wandering around the cabinets and be like, oh, look at that guy, what's he up to? And then you could see each other like hanging out with other players who'd walk by and be like, yo, what's up, and all that. It seemed a little more lively, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I can see that. That's funny to see it like this, but I think I do agree. Yeah, you feel like basically thrown in lively plays with other people walking around playing games. Yeah, that's cool.
If you guys end up having to do that again, I think it could be, if you just get the mic issue figured out, I think it's actually a cool setup.
Yeah, that might be a good idea, actually. Yeah, haven't seen it like this.
So here's my off-the-wall, but kind of cool idea I came up with. If you do another streaming from the cabinets next year, is, you know how Shmups, they leave a lot of dead space on screen? What you could do is you could do a multi-capture type of thing where you divide up the screen between 4 different cabinets, so you could see, like, here's the Ketsui cab, here's the DOJ feed, and then you could see, like, 4 different cabinets at once. I thought that would be pretty cool.
That sounds insane. But yeah, that might be a good thing to go for next time. I have to see if this is possible with the setup we have.
Yeah,
that's a cool idea. Yeah. I think 4 would be like complete overload of bullet hell.
Maybe 3.
Maybe 2 or 3, yeah, would be enough.
That just occurred to me. I was like, ooh, that could be cool. But I could see it being a logistical nightmare, but if you pull it off, I could see that being really cool.
Yeah, I don't even know if it's possible at all for the setup we had and will have for next year. But yeah, I will keep that in mind.
So we talked about a lot of the in-person things at Stunfest, and some stuff I probably wasn't privy to, obviously, because I wasn't there, just what I saw on stream. So I wanted to run by some things to see if they had a presence or not. So was EXA at Stunfest this year, or was it not?
EXA was not there this year. I think the only developers we had were, well, on the one hand, of course, Danbo, who bought his Blue Revolver double action, or a pre-version of double action, and presented it to us. And we also had Power Rumi. I don't know if you have heard about that game. I think it is available on Steam, but there's an upcoming Switch and Xbox One port, and this was the new version we had there. I think those were the only 2 developers presenting the games.
That's so odd to me. I mean, that's awesome they were there, and that's cool he did bring double action, because I was kind of thinking, like, this would be a perfect opportunity to show off double action.
Yeah.
But last year seemed like all the devs were coming out. You had EXA, you had M2. It seemed like a thing.
Yeah, last year we were able to contact them earlier, but this year the schedule was so tight. Considering that both M2 and EXA would have to come from Japan, it just wasn't possible with our schedule this year. It was just, everything was just last minute, basically. It wasn't the nicest event to organize because of this, but yeah.
I bet. Well, I think too last year was just a year of where I think EXA was doing a lot of press and was going around and doing a lot of different introducing their product, and this year it seems like from what I'm observing, that they're more focused now on like, okay, developing stuff and like getting it ready and all that. So they're probably doing less press this year anyway.
Yeah, I think they had at least some appearances in Japanese arcades, which, after all, I think will be their primary market. And I'm not sure when they are going to start and launch the system. I think they were planning it for this or next year. So, yeah, we'll see how it goes for next year. Then maybe they are interested in coming again to France. And if our schedule allows, we would be more than happy to welcome them again.
That would be really cool. Close to launch, and you can really get a hold of a lot of their games and stuff.
Yeah. Also, now that I think about it again, I think they were at the Spanish event at the Fightcade offline. I think they had EXA cabinets there. I'm not sure if the EXA stuff also was there, but they definitely had the games there.
Well, that's cool. So speaking of Fightcade, you mentioned that it had kind of a smaller turnout of players. How was the turnout of players for Stunfest this year compared to last year?
So one big difference was that we almost had no one coming from abroad. So basically only Jaimers and, well, of course, the super players, and Dell was also there from England. But other than that, we mostly, so the Shmup crew mostly were just the French guys. But within the French community, more people, I think, came. So for me, it was the first time to meet Juju Kenobi, who said he was there last year as well, but I didn't really meet him. And I was finally able to meet him this year, so that was nice. So we had probably the same amount of players, the same number of players, but just more French guys and less from abroad.
The French scene holding it down, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not super well versed with European traveling and geography and all that, but I'm trying to think, is there anyone else nearby France? Is Sweden, Eaglet and all them, are they nearby France, or is that like a big-ass journey?
I wouldn't call it a big ass journey, but of course you have to take the plane, and it takes, I don't know, 3 hours or so. It's not too bad, really. I think the main reason again was our very tight schedule and last minute stuff in regards to the organization of the event, so that many people from board just were not able to plan, and we couldn't really do anything against it. We are still dependent on the Stunfest committee, and Stunfest, after all, is a fighting game event. So the Shmups, they want to have them, I think, but it's a very small section, and maybe they don't care that much and give us those difficult schedules. So we couldn't really say what was going on and what kind of Shmups we have, what kind of super plays we have this year, just maybe 2 months in advance or so. And then no one could get the days off and book the planes and stuff. So yeah, I think this was one of the main reasons why we didn't get so many people from abroad this year.
Yeah, and I probably can shed some light on what probably happened. Just my familiarity with fighting game tournaments is that the fighting game tournament schedule is usually a wild, chaotic mess within the year, where all the big tournaments have to juggle what players go where, when, and they have to coordinate with each other. It's a faux pas to throw Stunfest and then another event of a similar size in another country or whatever, and then they're fighting over who gets what players and stuff. So what probably happened is that Stunfest had a date, and then some other tournament was like, no, we're taking that date, and Stunfest's like, oh crap, now we have to move our date, or something like that. I don't know if that's what happened, but that's super common with fighting game tournaments, is their dates are shuffling around and moving around and battling with each other all the time. That's probably what happened.
Yeah, could be. It was kind of unfortunate, and there's not really anything we could have done against it, so yeah.
Yeah.
Too bad.
Definitely. From the perspective of a viewer, it still came together really well. It was an enjoyable watch compared to last year, and this year I thought it was quality as far as being a viewer, so.
Oh yeah, certainly. And considering the game selection we had this year, I think it was much better than what we had last year. So last year we had only very few PCBs to put into the cabinets, and we had such a great selection this year, also of more obscure games. Funnily enough, we didn't have one Psycho game, not even one racing game, no Garaga, Bad Rider, nothing. But we had some great, very obscure games, and rare games I was able to try for the first time myself. So I didn't know about Psy Battler before or Sonic Wings Limited. And that was great to check those out. Oh, and Night Raid has left very great impression on me. Very interesting game.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I've never even heard of it.
So Night Raid is a game developed by Takumi, which you may know from the Giga Ring series.
Yeah.
And yeah, so you have big numbers as your high score. And the most interesting aspect of that game is that it has inbuilt 3 different leaderboards. One is for positive scores, one is for negative scores, and one is for the closest to 0. So this is quite peculiar as far as high score boards on the PCB itself go. And you have some kind of weird mechanic where you consecutively ram into enemies when you build up your rebound. And it looks very, very abstract kind of shooting game with strange geometric forms flying around and stuff like that. Yeah, very, very exotic game, I would say. Not very popular at all. And I really want to play it some more.
Okay, I gotta ask about negative score. How does that work?
I have no idea.
Oh.
You can get scores in the minus, and depending on what you do, you can either get like plus scores or minus scores. I have no idea how it works, and I didn't really figure it out. And the thing is with those obscure games, which are then also sometimes more complex, no one knows how they work. So we weren't able to figure it out, and there was no person who played the game to a considerable amount before, so no one really knew.
Yeah, I've been there sometimes with some smaller like indie shmups and stuff where...
Yeah, right.
This is 2019. I can just look up any information I want to look up, but nope. Sometimes you can't, and it's like, oh shit, how does the scoring actually work? You're just guessing, writing notes in your notebook, coming up with ideas.
Yeah, I mean, for Night Raid, if I play it at home, I can check out some super plays, and I think there's some good strategy topics on the forum as well. But when you play it at Stunfest for the first time and you can't access the internet and read some pages of strategy topics, you just have to figure it out by your own. And that was quite tough.
Well, there you go. There's a true arcade experience for you where you're just sitting there coming up with theories like, oh, how do you get negative score? Well, if you ram into a bunch of shit, I think you get negative score or whatever, and then...
No manual, no nothing. You're just confronted with a game, and the number sometimes goes up and sometimes goes down, so you have to figure it out. But that's also the great thing when you meeting there with your friends, and then you can figure it out together. This is just a great experience, which is quite rare when you don't have any arcades around you.
Yeah.
And the great thing about Stunfest is so you come together and figure stuff out with your friends. That's really cool.
Something tells me that if you pointed Jaimers at that thing, he would probably figure it out pretty quickly, or somewhat quickly. The scoring system.
Yeah, probably. He's good at figuring out stuff.
So I think we can get into the juicy topic now that I'm sure everyone's excited to think about, is the run selection and the super plays for this year. So to start off, how did you guys decide on what games would be played and come up with the lineup of players?
This year, I'm not sure if you have followed last year's aftermath of the event. So there was a open letter going around basically stating that Stunfest has made red numbers, minus score, so to say, and had some financial issues.
I didn't follow this. So Stunfest last year was just like tanking economically?
Yeah, it was.
Okay, fighting game tournaments tend to do that, so...
Yeah. So we weren't even sure if we were able to have shooting games at all this year.
In
the end, we were able, and we got some money to do something with it. But the thing is, it was much less. So our budget was cut in half or something. So we weren't really able to go for Japanese players. So if we would have settled for Japanese players, it wouldn't have been 3 demonstrations, but maybe only 2. And we really wanted to go for 3. So we had to think about Western players, which is also an interesting change. We didn't really have that during the past couple of years. Well, or not exclusively, let's say it like this. And yeah, we definitely wanted to have at least one cave game because cave games look very impressive visually, of course. And as Gus was still playing, I think this was one of the main ideas that first came to my head. I really wanted to have him there and do Ultra. And from there on, we also had the idea to have some Touhou game. We were talking about this for the past couple of 2 or 3 years, that we want to have Touhou at Stunfest, but it never really worked out in the end. So finally, we were able to have one Touhou player here. So Mari is from the Netherlands, which also then means it's pretty cheap to get him there, right? And that would just be perfect with our limited budget. So we went for this. And yeah, Blue Revolver, I came to invite the super player Kiwi for Blue Revolver because Danbo was there last year, presented us Blue Revolver, and I was really impressed by the game. It looks really cool, has a great soundtrack, great scoring system, and since it also has a very active player, that was the next step to invite him there. So yeah, all in all, I think it's a very balanced setup. So we have one arcade game, one cave game, then we have one indie game and one Touhou game. So very diverse this year. Last year was all arcade again. Oh wait, was it? It was Garega, which is arcade, and we got Fufu. Yeah, all arcade. Then Cycle. Yeah.
And then the Strikers. Yeah.
Exactly. So that was quite different than this year.
I think this year was an interesting year as far as the selection of games, because it's kind of like if you put Mark on the panel. Okay, Mark, what game should we play? I think I'd start throwing ideas out like this. It's like, hey, why don't we do an indie shmup? Because indie shmups are hugely important to the scene now. And I feel like people need to start recognizing, hey, players who do super plays of indie shmups are legit players. So let's, and they're honestly super entertaining. A lot of the Blue Revolver, Zero Ranger. So I was like really happy to see Blue Revolver was getting played. Oh, Devil Engine. That one's been really entertaining too. So I was actually really happy with the selection. I was really curious to see too the Touhou Super Play, because like yourself, I'm pretty ignorant of how Touhou works.
Yeah. I mean, I've learned a lot about Touhou, not only Ten Desires, but also some other games over the course of Stunfest. So that was great to have. But yeah, I also do think that indie games and Blue Revolver in particular deserve much more attention. So that was great to get some extra exposure. And I think Danbo was quite satisfied with it.
Yeah, I think it was if that didn't sell you on Blue Revolver, I don't know what will.
Exactly.
Yeah, you had the awesome dev there talking about the game and, being funny and charismatic. Then you had Kiwi just destroying it. And the game is really visually impressive.
Yes.
It catches your eye, so yeah, I'm excited. I was excited to watch the runs, and I was looking forward to when Double Action comes out. I definitely want to cover that on the show.
Yeah, it was just insane to see how consistent Kiwi is at Blue Revolver. That was one of the most impressive things about Stunfest, seeing him completely taking the game apart, not only during practice, but also during the live demos themselves. That was just awesome to watch.
Yeah, the dude had nerves of steel, because my thought going into it was, okay, Kiwi's a beast. We've seen him destroy Devil Engine and, his previous runs. I was curious to see how the live demonstration aspect would come into play, because I imagine that's a super stressful experience. But man, he was just on point the entire run. I was very impressed.
Yeah, and considering that he's still so young, it's definitely one player to keep an eye on. He's just scarily consistent.
Now it looks like when a new indie shmup comes out, Jaimers, Zorak, now Kiwi will be in the mix as far as putting up some serious high scores.
Yeah, looks like it. And also don't forget about his experience with Mushi Arrange. He completely destroyed that one as well.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I think he still has the #1 score on the Steam port of Mushihime-sama, the Arrange mode. And it's a very impressive one.
That's really cool. Yeah, I had no idea. Of course, we've got to talk about the Futari run, because has Futari been at Stunfest before?
Well, Black Label has been at Stunfest. I think I can't remember the year, like 2015 or so.
Okay.
NAK from Japan came over and played God Mode. So that was, I think it was the first Stunfest where we had shooting games as well. So that was just amazing. I remember this one. But other than this, we didn't really have we didn't really have Futari at Stunfest.
You know, Futari is one of the more popular shmups just in general, it seems like.
Yeah.
Mushi and Futari, a lot of people I talk to who aren't even really that into shmups, it's a long shot for them to recognize a cave game, but if they do, it's usually Futari or Mushi-sama. It's one or the other. I think that's a great selection.
Yeah, I think most of the popularity from Futari still goes back to that one video on YouTube, which was called something like the hardest video game boss ever.
Oh, okay.
You remember that one?
I have not seen that. I agree with that title, though. It's up there.
It's basically a video of, I think, the final boss of Ultra, but it's in 144p. You can't see shit, and it's just pink hell. And then it says it's the hardest video game boss ever. You can't see anything, and people went crazy over this one. It has a couple of million views, so
Holy
this
balls.
is perhaps the most clicked shmup video on YouTube to this day still. It has like 2 or 3 million views.
Holy balls. Yeah, I know Jaimers is Undertale. That isn't a shmup, but...
Oh yeah, this one's well, yeah. Kind of blue.
Iconoclast Cuphead clear. It's funny. That's a whole other topic of how our super players will destroy these insanely hard games and get an okay amount of views, and then they play just some popular game and get millions of views.
Oh yeah, and one more thing, the hardest video game boss ever video is basically a player credit feeding the final boss, so he's constantly dying. It's probably the first time he plays it.
I don't know. I think that might be a good thing, though, because if you showed a super player just destroying it, the audience, it wouldn't click with them. They'd be like, what's so hard about this? But if you show someone who doesn't know what they're doing just getting wrecked over and over and over, it kind of demonstrates the difficulty a little better.
Yeah, I think you're right, and it definitely also increases the comedic value of it.
Yeah. I guess we can go through the events one by one. So the first one was on Friday, and it was the Touhou Ten Desires, right?
Right.
And this one was different because this one he wasn't playing for score, he was playing for survival, which it sounds like is a whole different can of worms with this game.
Yeah, when talking 10 Desires, it's basically when you score in this game, it transforms into a completely different one. And that happens with some other Touhou games as well, but particularly so with 10 Desires, because when you are going for scoring, you are invincible for most of the time because you activate the hyper, then you have the iframes to graze some bullets and get the next hyper, and then you bomb all the time and suicide even. So it's lots of resource management going on there, and the main difficulty does not come from dodging bullets, but comes from doing the correct timings, which is very tough to do, but probably the easier and more easily appreciable way of playing the game is just to dodge the bullets, and this is what you do in survival. So we decided to go for a survival run on Friday, and for the second run then go for scoring. And yeah, Mari was able to clear on Friday the survival run, which was just great to watch. And he didn't really practice the survival strats before, so he knew what was going on, but he didn't put extra practice into it. So it was great to see him succeeding on this.
Yeah, it was funny. There were times on commentary where the game would throw some weird patterns at him, and Jaimers would be like, okay, he didn't practice this pattern at all, and you can see he's just purely instinctually dodging the patterns and stuff.
Right, because what you normally do is just hyper everything, bomb everything, so you don't get to see those patterns at all, and he was just great at improvising, I guess.
That's the funny thing about shmups is sometimes when Like, there's been times in DDP where I screw up and mess up my route and have to do a bunch of, like, panic dodging,
Yeah.
and it just keeps building on itself. So if someone just walks by and watches me doing that, they're like, whoa, this guy is legit. But, of course, I'm actually playing kind of badly because I'm, like, way out of position and, all that. So that's kind of funny from a viewer perspective of, in a way, maybe his improvised dodges were more entertaining than if he'd really hard routed what he was going to do and all that.
Yeah, I think there's this old saying among Shmup veterans that goes something like this: when you see someone dodging bullets and do some crazy dodges, he's probably not a really good player, because when you have a route, you don't go for risky dodges usually, and you avoid the dodging situation as a whole. So as soon as you come into risky situations and have to pull off those crazy dodges, it basically means you have messed up your route. So
Yeah.
you're probably not a very good player then. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny how certain games you can kind of recover from that, and then other ones like the second loop of DDP, that game, it has no sense of humor or levity where it just keeps throwing shit at you until you die anyway.
Yeah, I can see how smaller mistakes in DDP easily throw you off your route, and it takes more to recover than just bombing, because you don't know where you are in your route, and
Right.
it's really tough.
So after the Ten Desires run, we had the first run of Futari, which was played, I believe, on 1.5, right?
Right. And this was basically the version we wanted to have originally both runs on, because we didn't really thought that 1.01 would be feasible as a live demo. So we just wanted to go for 1.5 twice. But after seeing just the amazing run of Gus clearing the game of 1.5, he then approached us and said, well, let's just go for 1.01 the other day, which was quite insane even to consider. And only then he started practicing more 1.01. But yeah, the 1.5 clear, it was done on non-default settings. So he got an extra life every 80 million points. And usually you only get 2 X10s scoring rise. But still, it was quite an insane run. He made it look really easy.
Yeah, before Shmup Slam, I was completely ignorant of Futari, but I guess one nice side effect of me running that event was I helped a lot with SMC's run, which is like identical to the one that Gus did on Friday.
Yeah, right. Well, he's using a different character, right?
Yeah, but I mean, as far as the extends, he did the same thing with the extends.
Yeah.
It's crazy with that setting on how the game is like this rubber band where I remember at some point on the Friday run it was looking grim for Gus. Was it stage 3 or 4 where he's down to or an extend or two and you're like, oh, how is he
Yeah,
gonna beat this?
I think that was on the second run, but I can't remember, to be honest.
It was both. Both runs happened.
Yeah, he made some crazy recoveries. Yeah.
Actually, the Friday one was the one that looked the most like, oh, damn, this isn't gonna work out. Both of them looked that way, honestly, at like the midway through. But then he just clutches it out in the stages that matter and clears them.
Yeah, that's great for the tension, I guess.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about what stood out to me about the run. Okay, so there was the point of kind of things were looking tense in the middle, and then he destroys the later stages and then comes up against the final boss. What do you think of the final boss of Futari?
It looks like a nightmare to me, to be honest. I have no idea how he goes through those walls of bullets, really. And it's also the main difficulty of the mode, I think. You just need to, if you play on default settings, you need to go there with at least 4 lives to even have a chance and clear it. And even more so, of course, with a Reco. Maybe you have some more leeway with Palm. And then it just takes forever. The first form of the boss, or the first boss itself, it just takes, I don't know how long it is even. Is it like 5 or 6 minutes? It's insane. And then you
It's a
fight
long
two tier
fight.
Bs. And the second tier B is just another nightmare. And then you have the last form, which is probably the easiest one, even because you have to bomb and die anyway. So there's not too much dodging, at least comparatively speaking, when you take a look at the other 2 bosses. So you just have to pray to have enough resources when you reach the second tier B. But it's just way too difficult for me, I would say. It's insane.
I don't know what was going on when they were coming up with that boss, but it kind of felt like, no, screw you. You're going to pay us if you want to beat this game, because you're just going to have to pay the resource tax, essentially. I don't know if I've seen another game where it's like, bomb and then die. Those are your options, so...
Yeah, there's a funny story when the game came out in the Japanese arcades, and the first person was able to, well, first kill the final boss in Ultra mode and then reach the true last boss. I think it was SWY. And when he destroyed the TLB, he thought the game would be over, because up to this point, every cave game had only one TLB. And then the second TLB shows up, and of course he has no resources and dies instantly. But he was already like smiling and cheering, getting up off his chair, and then he gets killed by the next TLB. So
genius, so smart. He couldn't burst because of the super. But Washiga thinks it's over! But he won the last round! And the Noah doesn't care! He still got 65%! Oh my god! Washiga, no! Washiga, not like this! What are you standing up for? Why? Oh my god! Washiga thought it was over and stood up, and Ogawa gave him no remorse! That is exactly what happens. Donut celebration with pop off! Oh my god! Take it in, flex on him. Unbelievable. Washige is going to be
it took him some more months to beat this one as well. But people were just shocked to find out.
Yeah, it almost seems like Cave is trolling the player base a little bit with the final boss on this one. It's kind of like, oh, you think you're good? Well, here's another final boss, and you're going to have to bomb. So,
yeah.
I can't think of another final boss I've seen where the amount of resources, even for really dedicated players, is so high.
Well, think DDP, maybe?
I don't think so. Jaimers can...
You need to bomb a lot there, right?
You do, but it didn't seem nearly as... Maybe I'm less familiar with the Futari one, but it seemed like in DDP, you have to bomb a load, yeah. But you see Jaimers or... WTN.
WTN?
Yeah. They can get through that with a surprisingly low amount of resources compared to someone like myself, who I'm just bombing all day.
Yeah.
But it seemed like...
I think you're right, and after all, yeah.
I was going to say, with this dude, it seems like, no, you're bombing. There's no way around it.
Right. And I think after all, DDP has been no missed, and that's just not possible for Futari Ultra at all. So, yeah, it's a resource fest for sure.
Yeah. So that's probably a good thing you guys had that extend feature on there, because for a game like Dononpachi, that would be maybe make it too easy, but because this last boss is such a troll, it's almost like for a live demonstration, it's pretty necessary, feels like.
Yeah, I don't think it would have been a good idea at all to go for default settings. That's just bound to fail. I mean, if everything works out under those circumstances, I think the most we could have hoped for would be to reach the final boss, but not to beat it at all. It's just so much RNG into the run as well, and so many things have to go right. It's not only skill, but then also RNG. It's a nightmare, this mode.
SMC probably pointed out in the chat too. Yeah, when I was talking to him about it, I mean, it sounded like the amount of RNG in Futari is pretty astonishing for a cave shmup.
Yeah, it's insane. There's a lot of it.
So then, from Friday we go into Saturday, and I caught these on the back end. What are your thoughts on the first Touhou run of Saturday?
Was Touhou the first?
I believe so.
Wasn't it Blue Revolver?
Blue Revolver. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong thing here. Yeah, go ahead.
So for Blue Revolver, basically everything that could have went right did go right. It was just amazing. What was his score again? Like in the 180 millions, and he cleared the game, and it was just perfect. It was the one run he was hoping for to get on stage. It was just ideal. Not too many mistakes.
Yeah.
It's a brutal game. He makes it look so easy, really, but all those patterns, they are just bound to trap you and can mess you up anytime, and it's a very tough game.
Yeah, even for like a really experienced player, it still looks hard. Like some of those dodges were Terminator 2 level where he's stone cold killer making those dodges. Damn. It was really impressive.
He also scored like crazy. So his record and the world record is 191 or something, maybe a bit higher, I don't know. So he got really close to this one as well. So it wasn't only survival, it was also a really, really good scoring run.
Yeah, I was really impressed after watching that one. Well, This guy's someone to watch out for.
I was shocked to see him being this consistent and pulling off this run in a live setting.
Yeah, and then that was the one with Danbo on commentary too. So it was a magical run. Because, yeah, he was really funny, and I liked when he'd point out things like, oh, he's just swagging right here, like he's styling on this part and stuff, so.
Right.
So then after that was the scoring run, and we kind of talked about, for Touhou, what the differences are there.
Yeah, exactly. So then we had 10 Desires. I wasn't going for survival, but for scoring, which means, as I just said, very difficult timings to execute and not so much dodging. And I think he had a couple of restarts at the beginning because he messed up his route. So there were like 2 or 3 restarts. And then it went all right for most of the game. But towards the final stage, he made some more mistakes and couldn't really recover. And unfortunately, he wasn't able to clear the game. So this just tells you how much harder the timings are when you play the game for scoring in comparison to the dodges during the survivor run. So it looks less impressive maybe to the uninitiated, but it's much more difficult.
Well, it seems like if you're playing a shmup where you're playing fast and loose with a bunch of iframes,
yeah,
I'm assuming there's not a lot of visual stimulus of when exactly the iframes begin and end. I mean, you have a general idea, but like you said, those tight timings, it's like hitting those one-frame links or something.
I think you need to have a deeper understanding of the game's mechanics in order to appreciate those kind of games. And I think it's very direct experience and very direct, immediate understanding if the only thing you have to watch out for is only dodging bullets. So everyone can like easily understand this, easily appreciate this. And any of the deeper mechanics just take some time, or maybe you have to play the game yourself in order to just fully understand just how difficult it is to get those timings right and everything.
And is there some kind of rank system in 10 Desires, or is there no rank?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think there's any rank, no.
Because I was thinking maybe that might be a factor too, if getting way higher scores if the rank gets jacked up or whatever. Just throwing hypers all day.
I don't think that's the case.
Oh. Well, how did he feel about it? Did he feel like it went okay, or did he feel like it got out of hand?
I do think he, of course, was not really satisfied with it because he is a scoring player and the survival was just a warm-up for him, and he really wanted to present the scoring clear as well. Nothing really you can do. I saw him in practice earlier this morning getting close to his PB, absolutely insane scores, like in the 3.1 billion point range. But unfortunately, he wasn't able to pull it off, and yeah, he probably wasn't too satisfied with it. Who can blame him, right?
Yeah, that's why I was thinking, because I think Kiwi talked about this too, surprisingly, because he tweeted about kind of feeling not super satisfied with his second run, which we'll get to, which I thought was understandable because he didn't get the clear, but it was like still such a good run that, I mean, and you already got the clear anyway. But it kind of made me think about this a little bit. Like, how would I feel if I flew out to France to play Dan 3 or something, and I'm unhappy with my performance, let's say, and then that's it. There's like, okay, that's the end of the story because one event per year kind of thing. And it's not like you bring people back to do runbacks or something. So I was thinking about this actually today, and I thought, wouldn't it be nice with Shmup Slam that I do redemption runs if people want to like run it back or whatever from their Stunfest run, like, okay, I'm getting it this time, and then they do it on Shmup Slam. What do you think of that idea?
Yeah, that's a cool idea, I think, because I do think it can be quite hard psychologically. As you said, you fly over and you want to show your game and then you fail it. Even though I wouldn't say the two have failed it, still, you feel like that yourself. And what is more important, I think, is to show the game to a bigger audience and put some more attention on it. The people in the crowd that are directly watching you or the people on stream, I don't think they were like dissatisfied at all. Of course, the player feels differently because the player has such high expectations of himself. Yeah, but I don't really think the audience cares that much about it. But I do like the idea of having this revenge then later on Shmup Slam or somewhere else. Incidentally, I don't know if you've heard about it, but there was a Shmup event at the beginning of May in Kyoto at an arcade called Acho. And they had Dodonpachi Daiojo white label.
Oh, nice.
And the player died in 2-1, which means game over instantly, and he couldn't even continue, which is very rough. And then I think it was 2 or 3 weeks later, the same player set up a live stream from this arcade and got his revenge run. And he went much further with the game. He still didn't clear it, but he had a second chance. Then it feels very rough if you die on the final stage or something and then feel like you have failed to demonstrate your run and your game, your favorite game, to a greater audience.
Yeah, and I think this is a good comparison where shmup demonstrations are, that I can think of, the most brutal form of demonstration ever, because, I mean, seriously, your mistake is probably down to a few frames or 1 second of misjudgment, or, you know what I mean?
Right.
The preciseness required is so high, and then you add in all the tension, and, like, there's been times where I start to feel like I'm gonna get the 2-wall in DDP, and all of a sudden my hand just gets a little shakier, and I'm making, like, shittier dodges, and that's just enough to screw me over. So I can't even imagine in a live setting how nerve-wracking that would be.
Yeah, and it feels so much worse when you, for example, compare it to a speedrun, where you can make a mistake and just continue.
Exactly.
It feels so much worse when you continue in a shmup and your score is reset to 0 and you're completely off route. When you're playing a rank game, maybe the rank is reset. Yeah, it's just awful. And it's so much easier to make a mistake in the speedrun and just continue.
Yeah, exactly. Even so, I do speedrun Super Metroid, and that has a reputation for being one of the speedrun games that you can actually die during the run. And the thing is, even if I make a mistake in Super Metroid, let's say I miss a wall jump or I miss a short charge,
right?
If I was doing that in front of my friends, they probably wouldn't even notice that much. It's like, oh, even though that was a much larger input mistake than slightly missing a dodge and exploding, like I said, it's like, oh, you missed a wall jump, you can just, respin and hit the wall again. Not a big deal. Imagine Super Metroid, every time you miss a wall jump, Samus explodes. It's like, okay, Samus is dead.
So with the wall jumps, you have a second chance. You can just try the jump again, but when a bullet hits you, you don't get a second chance of dodging this one bullet because you already got hit. Life lost, over.
Yeah, for Maribel or people who do live demonstrations in shmups, and I'm gonna do one in Shmup Slam, and you guys can see me fail horribly on stream. It's almost like a coliseum. Not everyone is gonna walk out alive. If they do, that's a miracle, because these live demonstrations in this genre is so brutal that the audience should understand that some people are gonna be crushed under the game. It's just too much to expect every single player to get the clear every time.
Yeah, casualties are inevitable.
But that's kind of what makes it fun, though, too.
Right.
If everyone cleared, we're all playing a really easy shmup, and everyone cleared it, it wouldn't be that interesting. What makes them fun is the fact that it's so dangerous.
Yeah, that's just how I see it, yeah.
So, hopefully going forward, for people thinking about doing live demonstrations, either for Stunfest or for Shmup Slam or whatever, don't be too afraid about failing, because it's probably going to happen to a good portion of the player base, so... So then after that that was Saturday, right? We had those 2 runs Saturday. And then the Sunday runs were Blue Revolver and then Futari, correct?
Yeah, correct. So Blue Revolver, well, as mentioned before, it unfortunately was not a clear. And Blue Revolver was the only game where both of the runs were more or less the same. So no different versions, different characters, or different approaches to the game. Kiwi just wanted to do it again with, I think, some more riskier strategies here and there, but smaller things you probably wouldn't have noticed if we didn't talk about it in the English commentary. I think like some more milking during the stage 4 boss or something like that. But it was more or less the same run, and unfortunately he wasn't able to pull it off. And this just shows you how difficult the game is and how good the run before was.
It was either Danbo or... Was it Danbo with you or Jaimers on the Sunday run?
Jaimers again.
On commentary. Yeah, I think Jaimers pointed out that where he died was right at the end where he was that close to clearing. It wasn't like a situation where he got himself deep in a hole.
Yeah.
It was kind of like the last pattern of Hibachi or something. It sounded kind of like in that area where the last pattern is just brutal and it's the hardest part of the game, but it's also the end or one of the hardest parts. So it sounded like that's kind of what happened rather than big mistakes or anything like that.
Yeah, not too many big mistakes in this run, but he died at the very end. Basically because he was sacrificing all of his resources because you have to suicide in order to get a higher score. So he could have played just very safely and get some resources, tons of lives and bombs for the last boss, but he decided to score. So he had much less resources to deal with for the final boss. So yeah.
Yeah, so he was putting it all on the line, essentially.
Yeah.
Which you gotta respect, so I thought it was still a really cool run to watch.
Oh yeah, certainly it was.
And then we have one of the most insane runs I've ever seen live.
Yeah.
The 1.01 Gus run. So we gotta preface this run a little bit, okay? On Friday we watched Gus play, and I actually had no idea that he still uses a 360 controller.
Yes, he does.
And so, Mark Logic dictates 360 controller cannot be used for these games. My thinking, just because how shitty the D-pad is on that thing.
Think again.
Yeah, exactly.
He's a madman.
Yeah, and I actually have to point out, you know how he had the pillows to stabilize his arms or something? You know that?
Yeah.
I've actually done that myself. It's really helpful if you're a pad player. I do that myself too when I play on pad. I put my arm on something, stabilize it, so that you don't have to hold up the pad. So I think that was... that's actually a good strategy if you're a pad player.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make sense if you put it like this, but I'm not really a pad player myself, so...
I'm not either, but sometimes when I go over to friends or whatever, they'll have a pad, so it's like, hey, we gotta use the pad here.
Right.
And also, Gus, if you're listening, I think you should at least try out the Fight Commander for the 360. So Hori makes a dedicated fighting game / shmup arcade pad that I guarantee is better than the 360 pad. So maybe he should give that a try just to see what he thinks at least.
Yeah, I don't remember whose controller it was, but I think during practice he didn't use his own controller, but he had one from the stand there lying around, and he was really fond of it and said it's the best controller, and it was still an original Xbox controller. And he said it was the best one he ever had, and the person who owned it then gave it to him. So I think this was really cool. So he just got a new Xbox controller.
Again, that sounds silly, but the manufacturing on D-pads on controllers actually can vary from time to time. I've had some Sega Saturn pads that
I see.
were very good. It's hard to exactly explain, but they have a really good amount of stiffness and they're consistently able to hit the diagonal inputs really well. And then I've had other Saturn pads that are just garbage. And so I can imagine, yeah, it does, I've had that with Super Nintendo pads. When I speedrun Super Nintendo games, I have the pad that I use. I actually bought 10 Super Nintendo pads and then went through them and found the best one, so.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so it's actually probably a nice coincidence or good luck that he found a well-manufactured pad while he was there.
Right.
Getting onto the subject of 1.01, SMC actually has put together a really cool guide on the differences between 1.5 and 1.01. Do you have any differences that come to your mind immediately?
There are so many, basically. I think it was interesting to see how different the icicles work on stage 2, the different HP they have. Also, how different some of the boss patterns are. So some bosses are more or less the same, other bosses are significantly harder in 1.01. And also your bombs do less damage in 1.01, so they're more or less just a defensive weapon, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, everything is just much harder, basically, and boss fights take forever, especially the final boss. Yeah, what really helps is that you have a smaller hitbox, so while you have more crazier patterns on screen, you also have more leeway, have more occasions where you can just get lucky and go through with it. So in 1.5 you have to dodge some scarier things, and in 1.01 you just pray and hope it gets just through.
That's funny. I believe there were certain patterns where he's literally just flying through the wall. It's like, okay, let's hope we slip through.
Absolutely.
That run was a huge highlight. Another difference is that he didn't play the same ship or the same character. Like, he had to switch over to Rico, right?
Yeah, Rico's best to use in 1.01.
What's the problem in 1.01? Why did he have to switch? Do you know?
I think the characters are completely rebalanced and tweaked for 1.01, so Palm is much more difficult to use, and Wacko is a bit more powerful. I think Palm is just very weak and even harder to use, and the shot is very inconsistent, and with Wacko, at least for 1.01, it works alright, more or less.
Do you know the history behind the different versions as far as did 1.01 come first and then 1.5 is Xbox 360 exclusive, or is that arcade, like an arcade revision? Do you know how that worked?
Yeah, so basically in the arcade, the first one was just Futari, or what we later then called 1.0. And the game had some issues, so they put up an updated version, 1.5, in the arcades, which presumably then fixed all the stuff. And for the Xbox port, they then had a DLC, download content version 1.01, which was a bit like 1.0 but tweaked a little bit again. So there are differences between 1.0 and 1.01. But I think it's loosely based on 1.0, so just a harder version of it. But it came after 1.5 actually and was only available for download content, which also means that not many people can play it, which is kind of unfortunate. I mean, not many people can play it even if they have the DLC because it's just impossibly difficult, right? But yeah, the game, especially this version, just can't get too much exposure just because it's so tough to find as well.
Oh, okay. Why did they do this to us? Why didn't they call it... Okay, layman here. 1.01 comes before 1.5, right? I was laboring on the delusion.
After, right?
Right.
Yeah, so they put out the port 1.5 of the arcade game and then put the download content for the port. So basically the history is first you have the original, then you have 1.5, and then you have 1.01.
Right. And see, before talking to you about this, I assumed because in the world of software development, in the world of numbers, 1.01 is an earlier version. So my thought was that 1.01 was like the white label equivalent. And then they're like, okay, this is too nuts. And then they patched it and put 1.5. But no, that's not what happened. So it sounds like 1.01 is sort of like in a range that's DLC, right? Kind of thing.
Yeah, it's really confusing. I give you this. Also, I mean, some people do prefer, and I was quite surprised about this, but some people do prefer 1.01 over 1.5 because, I mean, the game is more difficult, but it plays vastly different due to the smaller hitbox. And also, there's one big issue with 1.5, namely the counterstop. So the game counterstops at 3.9 billion. And there's no counterstop, or at least no counterstop you can actually reach in 1.01. So you can still play 1.01 for score and don't have this artificial barrier where the game tells you to stop, which is quite cool.
Yeah. Does the Japanese community care or play 1.01 at all, or is it just Western players mostly?
I think it's just Western players mostly because, first of all, the game came never out arcade, so
right.
The high score community doesn't keep track of the scores. And as for the port, I think the first person and the only other person besides Gus who has actually cleared this mode once was a Japanese one. So he cleared it first and Gus was second. And I don't think there's a third one yet. So it has only been cleared by 2 people on the planet, basically. But on the one hand means something because it's just one of the most ridiculous shmups ever. But on the other hand, not many people can try it. So we don't know if the game would have gotten like proper exposure and a proper port that is available to everyone. maybe more people would play it, but it's not a very popular mode at all, it seems.
And I was trying to think, okay, so if the Japanese community is not playing 1.01 and there's the counter stop in 1.5, what's kind of the attitude towards the game? Is it kind of like, well, the game's done because of the counter stop, or how does that work exactly?
Well, the game is quite difficult, even the 1.5 version. So in arcades, it's still a very popular game, I would say. And not many people can get the counter stop, so they just have some fun and dodge some bullets. And the game is such a rush, really. So it is popular, even with all the issues considered. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering how that would work among the Japanese players since there's the counter stop.
In some arcades, even you have non-default extents at 80 million, set to 80 million, so that the game is a little bit less intimidating to newcomers. Because you can imagine, if you try 1.5 even, the first time in arcades, play Ultra mode, your credit will end in, 20 seconds or so.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a very brutal game, and the arcade operators know about that, so they throw in some extra lives there. And people can still then enjoy it. But yeah, it's a tough game.
A little bit more about the 1.01 run. In your opinion, is this run as crazy as going for white label to all that Fufufu did last year?
That's a tough one, but I would say that white label was even crazier, in my opinion, because NT cleared it even, so that's just... First of all, when you play on non-default settings for 1.01, you get lots of resources, which doesn't make the game any easier, and you still have to dodge stuff. It just gives you a little more room for errors, right? And that's not something you find in Dodonpachi Daiojo white label, because if you die on 2-1, all your lives get robbed away at the end of the first loop, so you're not allowed to make any mistakes in 2-1. And the same for 2-2. If you die in 2-2, it's just insanely tough to recover. I think Fufufu died in 2-3 last year.
I think it was 2-2 last year, wasn't it? Or
yeah, there
I
was
know it was early.
Some crazy recovery going on, so
yeah.
I can't recall correctly, but
it was one of those two stages, I'm sure. It was either 2-2 or 2-3. I know that.
Yeah, so for a white label, you have almost no room for error at all. And every bomb, every life is very, very precious. And you can just throw a little bit around with your resource in 1.01. So I do think, but that's just my personal opinion, that white label is even crazier to do.
I sat and thought about this for a while because, I'm not as experienced with Futari, but I have played a good amount of second loop black label, so I kind of have a little bit of idea what white label would be like.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think, some of those dodges in the 1.01 run looked absolutely balls to the wall insane. Some of those dodges were unbelievable. I can't think of moments in white label where, like, if you're really, really routed, there's some crazy dodges in white label too. So it's like hard to say sometimes which to me seemed more crazy as far as trying to pull that off in a live setting.
Yeah, but lots of the craziness from 1.01 comes exactly from the fact that you have such a small hitbox. And of course, then the game can throw denser patterns at you. And
right.
Yeah, you have to dodge more precisely. And with white label, it's a different beast, that's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. White label seems to get Psycho-esque with some of those bullet speeds in the second loop. It's just throwing fast patterns at you.
I would say if Gus would have gone for 1.5 default settings, that would have been harder than white label. But with non-defaults, I would say white label is more difficult.
I think I would agree with that.
Yeah, but all things considered, I would definitely say that Gus's runs in both of them, but of course, even more so the 1.01 was one of the most impressive live ones I've ever seen. That's for sure. No question about that.
Yeah, and I think it's a good sign of how impressive it is when Jaimers sit next to you and he's like, whoa, this is crazy.
Yeah.
It's
I myself, I wasn't able to follow many other dodges even. I couldn't comprehend what was going on in many cases. It was just insane. You were looking at the hitbox and he was dodging some bullets and then you kind of lost track of the hitbox.
Yeah, he's like buried in bullets. It's like, where'd he go?
Completely different on the screen. It was, it was something else.
Futari's not just a shmup, it's a stealth game. You gotta stealth through the bullets there.
Right.
Hidden patterns.
Yeah, and Gus is a ninja.
I think all the runs were really fun to watch this year.
Yeah, one thing I really liked about the runs is it showed only non-Japanese players, only Western players, which was quite nice to have for change, because this also shows that we are not dependent on the Japanese players and on the Japanese scene, but we also have our very own, very skilled super players here. And it was great to have a showcase of those as well.
I agree. I think, especially for people who kind of are less familiar with the Western players, everyone just assumes that there's only Japanese high-level players out there. And
yeah, exactly.
It's like, no, there's some insanely legit Western players, obviously. So I agree 100% there. I do want the Western community to get like its own, a little more identity for itself compared to always being about the Japanese players and their scene.
Oh yeah, exactly this. I mean, yeah, I would like, and definitely would like to see Japanese players again at Stunfest, but maybe have a mix of it. So maybe have like 2 Japanese and 1 Western player, or the other way around.
Yeah, I agree. It seemed like a really cool event, of course.
Yeah, I mean, most of the time when you play shmups, you just sit at home and play games alone. And sometimes you even forget that like other people do play it as well, and it's not just some text on your screen on forums or Discord or whatever. To actually meet those people and then play some games and have some talks, go to the restaurants, etc., go to the pub, it's just very nice experience and very nice change from just sitting alone in your basement playing those dodging games. So I always say that Stunfest is not really about the games, it's not really about shmups, but it's more about the people and about meeting them.
Well, definitely, because,
yeah,
I mean, that would be my main source of motivation for going to live events and stuff, more than playing on the cabinets and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's still great to play the games, and if you have those obscure titles and figure them out, it's also good fun, but it's more or less just the basis and the common thing that the players share, but then it's really all about the people.
I think it'd be really cool if we had more, if there was more local opportunities or people were able to meet up and play in person more.
Yeah, I mean, go for it and try to reach out to other in your area and maybe get some kind of meetup going. It's certainly possible. I mean, you have some players. I'm not sure about Idaho, but definitely there are some people in the US. And I mean, Stunfest is not in Germany as well. So, of course, I had to travel there. And sometimes you have to travel a bit more. Yeah, go for it.
For you, what was your overall takeaway of this year's Stunfest? How do you feel about it?
I have to say that overall, I even enjoyed it more than last year, all things considered. And I really wish we can do it again next year, which still is not 100% confirmed, but we are working on it. But it was just such a great experience, definitely. And I really want to go to Spain next year as well.
Were there any kind of ideas or like inspirations you got from this year that you want to carry over to next year, or maybe in Spain if you end up going to Spain instead?
Yeah, I mean, as mentioned before, the setup, change it, at least have the microphones. I want to have some other developers again. It was cool to try out the EXA games. So if we have a better schedule next year, this would be something I would like to change as well. And yeah, well, one thing I cannot change myself, but I would like to see different is, again, have more players from abroad this time. So maybe you could make it to Stunfest next year?
I want to. I would guarantee it to you, but my life is so unpredictable, even I can't predict what I'll be doing next year. But I do want to go out, that is for sure. Because, Mark shows up at Stunfest. It's going to be on the ground coverage, and I think I'd be a pretty fun addition to the lineup if I could make it.
Yeah, definitely.
So any other thoughts or ideas you want to talk about before we head out?
No, I think we covered it all, more or less. Well, maybe, next year's Stunfest. I mean, some people have asked me already about it. As things are now, I think Yam, so the main organizer for the shooting games, he didn't really want, or he basically can't do it anymore because he's just too busy with his job and life. So we are basically waiting for other French players to catch on and do the job then again. And maybe there will be another edition of Stunfest next year, but it's not confirmed. And yeah, we'll see how this one goes.
Yeah, that's just the nature of these types of events too, because I bet even the people on the staff don't even know. Like, no one knows. takes time to figure out whether they can do it financially and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, but one thing that will definitely happen is the Spanish event, so Fightcade offline next year. So this one's confirmed already. So.
Yeah, and maybe if, let's say, Stunfest doesn't pan out because of financials or whatever, maybe just funnel the Stunfest crowd to Fightcade and kind of be like, okay, we're at Fightcade now.
Yeah, that's kind of my plan.
Yeah, because it seemed like, just from the pictures and stuff I saw, they had a really legit setup there too.
Yeah, they have an insane setup.
So that could be really cool.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. So I guess maybe I'll do my final thoughts on just from the viewer experience. It was a lot of fun. I think this year, something about it, I can't articulate it yet. Maybe it was the American Western players being there, or maybe it was the addition of the cabs, or maybe just the vibe felt pretty chill and hang out, and like Jaimers was on commentary. So I don't know. I really enjoyed this year, and I think something about it stands out to me as something special. So.
Oh, that's great to hear. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Thanks for coming on, man. It was really fun talking about the event.
Well, thanks for having me.